Hello, friends and neighbors, and welcome to BronxTalk. It often goes unnoticed, but in New York there are tens of thousands of children whose well-being is unrepresented in cases of divorce and separation, domestic violence, and other legal uncertainties. Coming to their rescue over the last quarter century is the Children's Law Center that empowers children in courtrooms and in communities by reducing the negative impact of family circumstances and promoting well-being and equity for young people. So please join me in welcoming the Executive Director of the Children's Law Center, retired Judge, the Honorable Liberty Aldrich. Nice to have you with us, Judge Aldrich.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us. And a Juris Doctor who has the unique title of Children's Voice Fellow, which we're going to find out more about. Hailey Fletcher. Ms. Fletcher, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I just want to say one thing before we begin, and I think it's important to acknowledge that the Children's Law Center was one of 6 organizations that received more than $100,000 from the Bronx Community Foundation during their recent day of action. It's one of the ways we got to know who these folks are, so congratulations to you folks. As the only legal services nonprofit in New York exclusively dedicated to children, what do you see at the Children's Law Center now, and how are you doing? Is it troubling? Is it gratifying? Is it a combination? Do tell.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you to the Bronx Community Foundation, which we can talk more about. But right now, the Children's Law Center, as you mentioned, is we're coming close to our 30th year, and we're serving more children than ever. So we last year served...
It's either the good news or the bad news, but we'll get to that.
We served more than 8,000 children in 2025 across the city. We served the most children in the Bronx. And exactly as you said, our goal is to empower those young people to help reduce the negative impact of whatever's happening in their lives and support them through the court process as well as in the community. So it's what we love what we do. We think it's the most important thing we can do because we're really making a difference for young people so that they can thrive.
You know, you said the magic words to me and to the folks who watch our program, more children from the Bronx. Can we then extrapolate some understanding of conditions for the children, which means maybe the families or the schools or some other resources are not there for the kids that they seem to get into these situations?
Yeah, so unfortunately, as I think everyone knows, the Bronx is the most under-resourced of our boroughs, and families are not immune from that. So we see the highest rates of usage of the family court, and people don't go to the family court for fun. They go because there's domestic violence, there's mental health issues, there's substance abuse, there's other extreme troubles in the family that are leading people to go to court to ask for help. So that's where we come in because unfortunately we support kids where there's a parent who's incarcerated, there's a parent who's passed away, the children,
parents that don't get along. I mean, we sure have plenty of that.
Absolutely. So that's, the majority is where parents simply cannot agree on how to move forward with their parenting.
You sat on the bench in family court, right?
Correct.
What did, before there was the Children's Law Center, what happened to those kids who were caught in presumably some of the similar kind of circumstances? We know that things are a little different now than 30 years ago, but I think it's a reasonable question to say, what would it be like now or then when we didn't have the Children's Law Center?
So the Children's Law Center was founded by 3 women, one of whom was Chief Judge Kay, who was the first woman on the Court of Appeals, the first woman chief judge. And she was the one who identified this need. The truth is, before the Children's Law Center, there was no organization dedicated to supporting children in the circumstances that we're describing. And she thought that was wrong, and another two attorneys got together and founded the Children's Law Center.
So what happened to those kids? I mean, who knows? Many of them have grown and hopefully doing very well.
Exactly. I mean, what happened is that their voices are not heard. And so what we know, and we know from tons of research over the last 30 years in particular, is that children who are not able to have their voices heard in the court, the outcomes are not as good. They feel disempowered. They feel that they have no control, and that's already what they're feeling. And so it
that's really
compounds
important.
the problem.
Yeah, that's really important. So even if I'll just make it up that there's a separation of mom and dad, and the child gets assigned maybe to one or the other, it would be nice if the child can have some input into that decision, and even if it doesn't turn out that way, they feel like stronger and able to grow.
100%. And I want to be very clear. We are lawyers for the children, but we don't decide. The judge decides.
Yes, of course, the court will decide that.
So the court's job, as my job was, is to determine the best interests of the child. The child is just one voice there.
You use the word voice. What a perfect segue to our friend Hailey Fletcher. So forgive me, I've never heard it before. A Children's Voice Fellow. Who is that? What is that? What do we do?
So the Children's Voice Fellow at CLC, currently working on a project to empower children's voices across the nation. What New York does, which is very unique, is giving children a voice in these family matters, in these custody cases, in these domestic violence cases, allowing autonomy, allowing their story to be heard at every point in this case. And that is not, going around the United States. So as a Children's Voice Fellow, what I'm doing is working on a national convening which allows spaces for these discussions. How can children's voices be placed into these stories? How can it help these decisions? And how can we help these kids that are not only in family court, but that are just in the Bronx every day?
And your role in that is you're the one who listens to that voice and then does something with it in a case?
Yes. So through the Bronx Community Foundation, we were allowed and had the opportunity to bring children in from the Bronx that we call CVP fellows, who have this lived experience. CVP fellows, so Children's Voice Project fellows, and they do have lived experience. And we have the opportunity to talk with them, specifically things that I wish I would have known or could have talked about, or opportunities I wish I would have had that someone would be able to listen to me.
You've got to give us an example, obviously leaving names out. If you can give us an example of the kind of case that you were able to intercede and at what point you got involved that may have made it better for the child. I'm, again, not deciding what the court's deciding, but so an example, any example.
So before my role as a Children's Voice Fellow, I did practice as a law graduate with the staff attorneys representing that child's voice in court. And an example that we can think of, something so simple as visitation, wanting to see another parent, but the parents not able to come together, and having the tools to do that, therefore placing them in family court. But me and other attorneys for children being able to talk to the child, and the child saying, this is what I want. I'm not having the opportunity to see my parent. I would like to see my parent on these days, but I have games and things of that nature, letting them take control of this schedule, this opportunity to see their family.
Do those kinds of statements and input, does that kind of input have effect on the ultimate case? She's shaking her head, yes.
I'm gonna give an example from last week because
what could be more current?
I want to give you a really specific example. Last week we represented a 16-year-old girl who had been for 3 years had her case being heard in court between her aunt, because her mother had lost custody several years before. She was living with her aunt. She reported to us as her lawyers that her aunt was abusing her.
Oh boy.
So she wanted to go live with her father. we were able to file in court to get her a temporary order to move with her father. And last week we got a final custody order to her father. So that is the kind of thing where we're bringing to the fore an issue where our client is telling us something that no one else is responding to. So we're able to make a difference for that child to live somewhere that she feels safe, heard, and respected.
If I want to hire a lawyer, and have them represent me, we go through some paperwork, et cetera, et cetera. I'm of age and I'm not a minor anymore. How do you get the child to get you to represent them when a 6 or an 8-year-old is certainly not able to sign the paperwork?
100%. We do not solicit clients from kindergarten or from elementary school. We are assigned by the court. So we represent children when a judge says, you know what, there's something going on here in this family that makes me concerned about the child's well-being, and we assign the Children's Law Center to represent that child.
I want to get back to Ms. Fletcher about this whole notion of getting involved with the family. A parent must say, who doesn't really like the whole notion of it and may be in a very difficult situation, wait a minute, why do you get to represent my child? Do you have to deal with those kinds of things? Presumably you do.
A lot of the times parents question, especially if parents don't have attorneys yet, why does
why
my
does the
6-year-old
child
have an attorney?
Wow.
And they're getting talked to so quickly, but I'm still waiting for someone to contact me. But that's where it comes in. Well, we're not your attorney. We're specifically here for your child, and that is our role. And sometimes I feel like it's hard for parents to understand because as a family unit, this whole proceeding is stressful. Going to family court, this is my child.
I'm stressed just hearing about it.
And just,
and I'm not
wanting
kidding,
to
folks.
Exactly.
These are very difficult situations for the youngest people. I was going to ask you about how do you get the court to recognize your input, but if the court mandates your involvement, I've been wrestling with this question, thinking about doing this show. Where does social work support begin and legal work? And you'll start with that, and then we'll get to the judge about that. But because I'm assuming you see the family situation and the
Yes.
child situation from a social work point of view. At what point does it become, well, now we got to file something in the court?
So,
And are you involved before it gets to that issue? Would be a question.
So as for social work, here at CLC, we all work together when it comes to the child. We're looking at we're looking at the whole child, I want to say, not just what's going on in the court with them legally in terms of visitation, custody, but how are they doing in school? What's going on at home? Are they in therapy? Different aspects of their life, and especially when there's things such as abuse or domestic violence within the home, this is where we want to pull in social work and see, okay, what else can we talk to this child about to create that foundation to build that relationship?
Do you either you or others are social workers, or you bring in a social worker, maybe somebody who knows them from school or somewhere else?
CLC does have a team of social workers.
Wow.
I specifically work in the Bronx, and we have 3 social workers that do amazing work.
I also have, boy, it's working out perfect because I had in my notes, because you have it on your website about holistic representation. She suggested it. What does that mean, and how does that play through all of these cases?
Absolutely. So that is partly what we mean, is that we look at each child as not just their legal case, but how can we support them. And if it means working, to settle things out of court, hopefully we can do that, but still providing support through our social work services, we'll do that. But also it means supporting them, as Hailey mentioned, in an IEP hearing if the child has educational issues and needs additional support, or if there are, as there are in some Bronx cases, immigration issues. We're supporting them around that.
I'm sure there are many.
Yeah, and so we do that both directly and we refer. We try to we're trying to create a community of organizations that we work with that support the child.
I hate to think about this, and everybody, I presumably thinks about it, because you mentioned immigration cases. Daddy just got detained or deported. That is a very serious thing, but I can't find the words to say it. How do we deal with that other than just putting your arms around them and hugging them? I'm not sure legally what gets done or what you can do.
There are things that we can do. The family court can issue guardianship orders if the child needs to be with someone else in the meantime, someone else who can support the child to get all the school support, medical help, any other services that they may be entitled to. So legally, there are things that we can do to support a child if that child's parent is no longer here.
I'm just curious about this, especially since you know the law and you know laws. Has any two-part question? What cases are there cases that help change the laws? And if not, are there laws that you say, what we ought to be able to do now, which we can't, we never did before? I'm sure you see a lot of it. She's smiling because she probably nudges you every day. You know what we really need?
Well, I send out an email every week with important cases that all of our staff need to be aware of that set the law or change the law. We've at the Children's Law Center, we've litigated important cases that change the law.
You want to suggest what law, maybe?
Sure. In a case, I'm trying to think. There's a lot, but then they tend to get detailed. But we're involved in an important case about Hague proceedings, which are international custody and child abduction. And the Children's Law Center played a critical role in addressing children's right to get a hearing in those cases. So having a child's voice be heard by a judge.
So within the scope of American courts or U.S. courts is one thing, but now you may be dealing with another country.
Actually, in other countries, they have implemented that. In our federal courts, they're only just starting to implement
so we are
that. So right now, we're the ones pushing to implement that in federal court.
You mentioned the word holistic representation. Give me an example of something you've done that would reflect that this is how we handle it. I'm sure there's many.
There's a lot. But I want to say dealing with children that are nonverbal, that are our clients. And when it comes to those types of cases, you're not going to handle them as you would speak to, a verbal child and trying to get right in with it. You have to take each child individually and build a foundation with that child. Learn what they like, what they don't like, learn what they respond to, specifically with nonverbal children. Figuring out what things make them comfortable enough to even do an interview, do a meeting with them. So one example that I love to talk about is one of my clients. They did not talk, but in terms of getting an interview, they like to draw. So talking about their family, asking them to draw out their family and what their home looks like, they were able to do that. And then me going to be able to tell the court, this is what I've seen, and having that play such a big role.
Is there a difference? I know in the way you treat them, there would be a difference in age, but is there a difference in a way, in difficulty of in a way, an older person may be more assertive, and you can't kind of maneuver them or convince them by drawing a picture because they have established something. How do you view different ages and deal with different ages?
So I wouldn't even say that it's much more their ages, because a child can be 7 but be so mature in the way that they speak to me and talk to me about their home life. So I would say it's who the child is, because even though they may be 14 or they may be 7, I need to see who you are and maybe why the color of your wall behind you is pink, or why you carry this specific blanket with you.
You go to their home?
We talk to them in person, or if they're not available in person, we talk to them in video. And
yeah,
this is not just maybe one meeting. This could be 2 or 3 meetings because it's important for us to know who our client is.
You know, I'm going to ask you this, and you could certainly back it up one way or the other. I'd like to think that sometimes when the child says, "Oh, but I love your mom and dad," or whatever they say, does the child's being able to vocalize that in a court setting or a legal setting sometimes bring the parents back together? I'm hoping that's true. I'm praying.
I would love to say for the fairy tale answer is as soon as they hear the child's voice, finally, they're like, yes, we can listen to them and everybody can come back together and make a decision. But at most times, this is the first time that a parent has ever heard a child's voice, whether it be, you know, from home or in this legal setting. They come to the table and they said, oh, I never know my child wanted that, or I've never heard this before. Where is this coming from? And it's because we need to take the time to listen to children.
In general,
Yes.
of course, beforehand. Let's just talk about kind of like the next steps. What would the Children's Law Center like to see? Obviously, we'd like to see happy families. Do you follow up, let's say, after the fact and say, well, the child was given a guardianship.
Yeah.
We certainly want to make sure that worked out.
Well, so as Hailey mentioned, one of the things we're doing is we're reaching out to former clients, and we've created this fellowship for former clients who can come back and they can share their experience with us and share what happened afterwards, what they think they wish we had known, what they wish the court had known. So that's really important. But in terms of where we think the Children's Law Center is going, we are obviously committed to providing the best possible service for our clients. But in addition, we want to do more of this. We think it's really important for us to reach out to the community, to have people have a better understanding of what happens in family court, with the needs that our clients have, why children's voice is so important, and to come together as a community, especially in the Bronx. The Bronx is, you know, where I sat as a judge. It's an incredible borough. It's got such resources and diversity, and we want to bring folks together to support the kids. So that's where we're trying to go.
Must be frustrations and gratifications.
Yes.
Which takes
Yeah, which takes precedence. 100% the gratification.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yes.
Otherwise, you wouldn't do what you would do. You'd have a lot
Absolutely.
less hair in your
Yeah.
head. I'll tell you.
I've been working in this field and with for more than 30 years, and it's absolutely where I want to be and what I want to be doing. I have been at the Children's Law Center for slightly over 2 years, and I am not going anywhere. It's
Well,
what I
we're
want to be doing.
We're happy to see that. Haley, do you see people's lives change?
I do. I do.
In what way? And again, I'm hoping that the parents will change a little bit when they hear the voice of their child
Yes.
objectively, as opposed to when they have influence over them.
Yes. I want to say the biggest way that I see people's lives change is finally being able to hear their children's voices, turning down their own, thoughts and opinions of the other parent or the other person across the table, and saying, okay, who is this about? Who am I trying to make a happier life for? We're sitting here and we're fighting over this minute stuff, and the child is suffering. But going into the court, having an attorney that specifically works for the child, we're able to say, the child wants to be with both of you. The child wants to have a happy family. Let's try to put these feelings to the side that aren't, affecting the child. And let's look at, how can we push this child forward? The child wants to go to college. They want the parents to be at the graduation. They want to do all of these things. But, in the grand scheme of things, these little, for lack of a better word, petty arguments don't have to be there when it comes to the child.
Do other, I guess it's for either of you, do other locales in the United States have these kinds of things? You talked about New York, doing a good job with this. You'd like to think this is a general thing.
So I do, want to give a shout out to the Bronx because Hailey's here and trying to take the lessons learned from the Bronx to the rest of the country. There are, however, other jurisdictions that are doing this as well. California, Oregon, Washington, D.C. There are a bunch of other places. And we're, as Hailey mentioned, doing a national convening to bring those folks together.
I was going to say, are we the template?
We are.
Wow, isn't that exciting? Hailey, just one more thing about what you were talking about before. In medicine, we talk about preventative. Do you ever find that you're able to do something that prevents a larger problem or a legal problem? Or is it always just, well, now we're in court and I got to sort it out? She was shaking her head yes. So
I want to say that a lot of it, there's two parts to this question. So as an AFC is, kind of knowing the child, that's the preventative side, because going in there just concentrating on the legal aspects of the case and not the whole child, you miss stuff and you're not able to see everything. You want the court to be able to see the child as, a human being, a tiny human being,
right,
but with a big voice and a big story. And now, as a Children's Voice Fellow, the preventative work that I'm doing is going out into the community, working with Global Kids and Girls Vow, going to the Mont Haven School, and teaching about, just because you're not in family court doesn't mean these family problems don't exist, and being able to tell them, you have rights in family court. You have rights as a child, and we understand that growing up in a community, being a child, you don't speak unless you're spoken to, but you have a story, and that goes on into your adulthood.
And it's your job to elicit that story. So just in conclusion, Judge Aldrich, somebody call you? So here, custody and visitation, guardianship and adoption, domestic violence, family offense, abuse and neglect, child protective matters, termination of parental rights, special immigrant juvenile status. I'm getting this, right?
Yeah.
Parentage and child support, voluntary foster care placement, persons in need of supervision.
Correct.
Can somebody contact you in a preventative way before we get to the court and it becomes a larger problem?
So, as Hailey mentioned, we would love to talk to schools, other young people, to do presentations to explain what happens and do some prevention that way. Additionally, anyone can go to our website, which is clcny.org, and you can send us a note on
and that's a
website.
heads up for you.
Yeah.
Listen, Judge Liberty Aldrich, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us, Executive Director of the Children's Law Center, and the Children's Voice Fellow, Voices for Our Children, Hailey Fletcher. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for the great work you're doing, the very important work you do. That concludes the program. We want to thank our great producer, Ray Pagnucco, the Bronxnet production and editing crew. Of course, to you too, the people of the Bronx. Next week, we will talk with Bronx music legend Bobby Sanabria about the release of his latest album, 9-time Grammy nominee. He'll be here, maybe playing some drums. I don't know, let's see.